We will go out now to talk a little Heat with the best thing on television right now, man. He is the best. He is my favorite basketball analyst. We go to the Toyota of Hollywood guest line. Shop over 1,500 Toyotas indoors in one of America's largest showrooms at Toyota of Hollywood on 441 between Hollywood and Sheridan. The inaugural head coach of the Miami Heat, Ron Rothstein, joins us there. Coach, thanks for the time. Really appreciate it.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Doing fantastic. And just to let everybody know that you can check out Ron Rothstein, the whole crew. They are going to be doing pre-games on Saturday, heat.com, 7:30 to 8:30, leading you up until tip-off. And then post-game, they will be back live on Fox Sports Florida after the game for your post-game coverage there. So, Coach, biggest takeaway yesterday, another comeback win for the Heat. They keep getting into these big deficits, but they keep finding a way out of it. I'm sure that's got to be a heart attack as a head coach, but what have you made of how the Heat have gotten this 2-0 lead?
The more I watch this team, the more I marvel at their mental stability and their trust in each other. I really do. And in their coaching staff. You don't do things like this if, there's turmoil within and guys are picking at each other and there's no trust. But when you see a team constantly come back like this, there's great belief inside that locker room and in that huddle, and everybody's buying in. And I have to say, from everything I know, this has all started with Jimmy Butler. He is, from day one, it's been all about winning. Now, look, everybody's contributed. You don't do things like this without great team play, great contributions from multiple people. But the basis of this culture, the buy-in by Jimmy Butler, has just trickled down right through that roster. And if you talk to anybody inside that organization about Jimmy, he's all about winning. That's all it is. That's hard to find today.
What do you think about the way he goes about it, Ron, where he doesn't really care about how many points he scores? He's, focusing on the defensive plays that he goes and gets it. Can you, I guess, just the little things that you see him do to get people involved, to find those ways to win when he's not having one of those, crazy performances where he's putting up 40 and, getting to the line a bunch of times, like the makeup of getting them to that win?
He's unique. He really is. I've tried to think, I've seen a few basketball games in my years. I've coached a few. I've been with a few players. This guy is really unique. The only guy that comes to mind in this regard, the way he goes about it, believe it or not, and I'm probably missing a few, with his doesn't care if he scores, just wants to do things for the team. He's selfless to a fault almost. It's team first. A lot of guys talk about team first, but reality, it's them first.
As long as they get theirs.
Thank you. Yeah. A lot of guys want to win on their terms, not on our terms.
Right.
Okay. So the only guy that comes to mind in this regard, and I'll go back to the original Bad Boys, was Bill Laimbeer. He didn't care about anything except screwing up your mind, taking your head off, and winning games. But Jimmy does it in a different way. It is so unique, and you can't teach that. That's from within the human being. And they talk about skill level. Well, that kind of uniqueness is a raw talent. That's a skill also, which is very, very hard to find. And I really don't think I'm overstating it. I really don't.
Ron, I think a lot of people, and they talk about it constantly with the Heat, about just making winning plays and not worrying about numbers. And anytime there's been a guy on the Heat roster that has worried about his numbers, that guy never fit in. But my question is this. When was the last time you've seen a Heat organization, whether it's Pat Riley, whether it's you yourself, have to depend this much on this number of young guys and it work out?
Never. This is also
that's the
unique.
most amazing
It's
thing
very
to me.
unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. It's just listen. When you look at Tyler drafted 13th, you look at Bam drafted 13th, you look at Duncan Robinson undrafted, you look at Kendrick Nunn undrafted. It's also pretty much unprecedented. You know, I've seen teams become good with high draft picks, and you know, eventually, like when we beat Oklahoma City in 2012 in the finals, they had a championship roster. They were just too young. Okay. And they didn't have any veterans to lean on. So we have like probably the perfect blend, because you've got the young kids that do really amazing things. But when it comes down, you know, to clutch time, there's Goran, there's Jimmy, and then there's Bam, who's a young veteran.
Right.
But you're right, Leroy. It is absolutely unique. I mean, my first year, we had 6 rookies. You saw what happened. but yeah, probably half of that was my fault anyhow. But and the other thing is, I made mention of this a few weeks back. You look at our roster. We have one top 10 draft pick on the whole roster, and that's Andre Iguodala, who's 36 years old and was drafted number 9. That's also, you look at the rosters in the playoffs and the teams that are keep moving on. That's unprecedented. You don't see that. Doesn't happen.
Ron, does this remind you of that Pistons team with Larry Brown that won the championship against the Lakers?
No. This team is different. No, this team is different. This team, to me, I'll say this much. It does remind me of them a little bit because of the defensive efficiency in the fourth quarter. Our defensive fourth quarter numbers in the playoffs have been absolutely sensational. I mean, if you got those numbers every quarter, it would be the number 1 defense in the NBA, almost by far. But that's pretty hard to sustain over 4 quarters. That's the reality of the situation. It also reminds me a little bit of the Bad Boys, because that was a fourth quarter. That was a team that would spar with teams for 3 quarters and then put the clamps on in the fourth quarter, spurt 10 to 12 points, game over. Great teams finish well. They really do. And for the rest of the game, the interesting thing is Milwaukee, Boston, they've had double-digit leads on us. I think the largest was 17, but it never got to like 25, if you know what I'm saying. No one ever let go of the rope. So the leads were always somewhat manageable, and especially today with the 3-ball. I mean, you're down 15, 3 threes from Duncan Robinson, all of a sudden it's a 6-point game. Wait a second. Now that team that has a 15-point lead, you know, things are tightening up a little bit. They're starting to feel the pressure, and you cannot discount that. That is huge.
Do you think it's when we hear reports after the game that Marcus Smart is screaming at his teammates, throwing things in the locker room, they blow a lead, they're upset? Do you think that's a big deal, number one? And number two, as the Heat, when they inevitably will hear that, do you think, we feel like we got in their head a little bit, that we're breaking them a little bit, or it'll probably all be erased by game 3?
Listen, sometimes teams need that catharsis. Sometimes, look, I was in a lot of locker rooms with Udonis Haslem after the game. You want to talk about guy going off. And because, listen, Leroy, you guys know this, okay? Coaches can only do so much. Peer pressure, you hear it from a teammate, you hear it from someone you care about and you know is honest and from the heart. Sometimes that's a message a coach can't deliver. Maybe that's what the Celtics need. You don't know. You never know, because you never know what's going on in that other locker room, good, bad, or indifferent. Everybody's got drama. You even got drama when you're winning. There's always somebody harboring. I didn't play. It's there. It's human nature.
Yeah, look at Denver and Michael Porter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the other thing is players will say things after a game. Coaches will say things after a game, in the heat of the moment. And then you stop and you think about it and you go, why did I say that? Or sometimes it just had to be said. So game 3's coming up. It'll be another game. But when you keep losing big leads and lose tough games down the stretch, it does have a way of playing with your mind. It really does. And it can be an almost debilitating factor going down the stretch. Uh-oh, I got to take this shot. And if there's the slightest bit of doubt and the slightest bit of hesitation, that's all you need at this level, because the margin of error is really, really, really small.
We're talking to Ron Rothstein. You guys can see Ron tomorrow. Heat.com. They are doing a pregame show 7:30 to 8:30. And then the postgame, they're going to be live on Fox Sports Florida. Before we get you out of here, Ron, one more for just your impressions of how Goran Dragic is getting to shine on this stage. He's been with the Heat for a while now. He's making clutch baskets yesterday. He's been just such an offensive catalyst for Miami. What have been your impressions of Goran getting a chance to do this under the bright lights?
Well, I want to go back to the regular season. I want to go back to before the season started, when Spo called Goran in. They sat down, they talked, and Spo hit him with, I want you to be sixth man of the year. I want you to come off to the bench. And the reason was, he's 34 years old, coming off knee surgery the year before. I think at the end of last year, he got tired after he came back from knee surgery. And you can tell when Goran, he just didn't have any bounce to his game, and like almost every shot hit the front rim. And when you're constantly front rimming shots, it's your legs. And Spo didn't trust himself to play him as a starter and be able to limit his minutes. But as a sub, that would help him limit his minutes. And he wanted to do that to keep him as fresh as possible, and he felt it would be the best thing for Goran and the best for the team. And Goran bought into it because he's such a good guy. I mean, look, we all have egos. Everybody's got an ego. But Goran is such a good person. And he saw the wisdom in it, and he bought into it. And then when it came playoff time, one more now, he was ready and spoke. He knew he had to make that change. So now you're seeing a revitalized Goran Dragic. I think the fact that, there's no travel in between games has really helped a lot of guys. I think he's one of them. And he's got his legs. And listen, he's a really good player. He hasn't been an all-star for nothing. And I think he's wearing the mantle of the veteran that they can rely on me when they need me. The other thing is, it's really feeding into this whole narrative is our pick and roll game. And I think, ridiculously absurd pick and roll coverage that is rampant in the NBA today. Thank God we don't do it anymore. That allows the point guard to come off the screen and go downhill and pretty much do whatever he wants. Milwaukee didn't have an answer for it. Boston doesn't have an answer for it unless they change their coverage or I don't know if you noticed, but during the early in the fourth quarter last night, they went small. They put Grant Williams at center so they could switch everything. And they flattened this out, and the 7-point lead went from an up 7 to -2 in like 5 minutes. And then he substituted again and brought the big guy back in. And as soon as the big guy's in there, Spo's calling pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll. You don't have to. Right. You don't have to be tricky. Just when you're running a football and they can't stop you, pound it. And that's what we're seeing. And to me, it's almost mind-boggling, but that's the reality of the situation. And Goran is just absolutely tearing it up.
We appreciate the time, Ron. Thank you so much. Catch Ron tomorrow. Heat.com, 7:30 to 8:30. They have a pregame show. And then at the postgame, they will be live on Fox Sports Florida. We really appreciate the time. Always love your insight.
Hey, great to be with you. You guys stay safe. Be well.
Thanks. You too.